Hi there, students. The tipping point. Okay, the tipping point. I think most commonly nowadays we use this in climatology to talk about irreversible change in the climate. A tipping point is a point at which a change becomes irreversible. You can't go back to the previous state, to the previous system. And this is a tipping point where when you go past the tipping point, everything changes permanently, often with dramatic consequences. So a tipping point, a critical moment in something that is very complex, where just a small influence produces either a very large change or an irreversible change. This is a crisis point in a system where significant change takes part. The execution of the revolutionaries by the dictator proved to be a tipping point for the country, and everybody and the people generally started to support the revolutionaries. Or maybe with interest rates. If interest rates go up, they change the system, but maybe there's a tipping point when they're very high where it has a significant effect on the system. We're at a tipping point in this company or in this project. If we spend just a little bit more, we will get a very large increase in productivity. So a tipping point is where a change can't be stopped. And with global warming, I think perhaps we have reached a point where we have gone past the tipping point, and we are never going to be able to go back to the climate that we had before. We will have a new climate. It will be hotter, it will be different. And I think we have passed the tipping point when large amounts of Antarctic ice melt, or when the permafrost melts. This is a tipping point, and you go past the point of no return. So the tipping point, this is where perhaps a situation changes completely. Maybe a tipping point is where you have to make a decision. I think in some ways a tipping point can be like a turning point where you've got to make a decision. Okay, so this is something is at a tipping point. If it becomes any less, then it will change the way business is done. I'm thinking when I was a kid, going on a plane, flying was a very special thing, and people used to dress up and wear their best clothes to go to the airport. But there was probably a tipping point in the 80s, maybe the late 80s, where the price came down and down and down and down, and that was a tipping point, and it caused a very large change in the attitude towards flying, and everybody flew everywhere. Okay, so the tipping point, this is the point where a small change is enough to cause a much larger, much more important change. And that is talking about a tipping point, a critical point in a process or in a system beyond which change is unstoppable. It's something that you can't go back to the old system. Unstoppable change is taking place. So I'm thinking with this of a tipping point is one of these scales where you have two things hanging, and when they are equal, the two things are in equilibrium. But when you put something on the other one, it's there is a significant movement that it goes past the tipping point. In all things, there is a tipping point. So, how many hours a day can you work? 8, easy. 10, okay. 12, yeah. I think 14 is probably the tipping point. If you work 14 hours every day, you probably start to get ill. Okay, so a tipping point. Okay, so in at some point in the past there was a critical moment, a crucial point, a critical stage, something that was a watershed moment, a critical juncture. This was a game changer. It's at the turning point or the tipping point. So yeah, do you think that global warming has gone past a tipping point? I'm pretty sure it has, and we will have to settle for a new type of climate, and we have to do the best we can. So, tipping point, the tipping point, formality. Tipping point. I think I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. Use it absolutely anywhere. And it's tipping point. If something's balanced, then it's okay. But suddenly, you put more weight on one side, and it just moves over completely. So, tipping point. Bye for now.